Hi, I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avocet Communications and host of StrategyCast. Join me and my guests, innovators, disruptors, and visionaries, as we explore bold and brave marketing strategies that help you transform, scale, and grow your brand. I'm so glad you're here because today's episode is all about what it takes to create a truly memorable brand. I'm joined by Kriston Ohm from Alouette Cheese, a marketing powerhouse who's worked with brands like Stanley Black & Decker, Hershey, and Turkey Hill. Kriston's career is a masterclass in bold strategic thinking and fresh approaches to brand positioning. Today, Kriston explains the strategic thinking behind Alouette's latest campaign aimed at increasing market share in an incredibly crowded cheese marketplace. Kriston discusses the importance of understanding consumer insights, the challenges of repositioning a long-standing brand, and the creative process that brought Alouette's new brand character, a whimsical songbird, to life. Listen in for valuable lessons on brand differentiation, consumer behavior, and the power of storytelling in marketing. Let's get into it.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to StrategyCast. I'm absolutely thrilled to have Kriston Ohm join the show today. Hello.
Hi, Lori. How are you?
I am fantastic. This is such a meaty topic. Kriston is with Alouette Cheese, and we're going to talk about a campaign that she's recently launched and all the strategic thinking that went into getting it to market. Before we go there, you've got such an incredible, amazing background. Tell us all about it.
Thank you. Well, I'm a brand marketer at heart. I love brands, and I really fell in love with brands at my experience early in my career with Stanley Black & Decker. I worked a lot on the DeWalt brand there, and I became fascinated with the fact that contractors would tattoo themselves with the DeWalt logo. And I thought, what is it about the brand that makes you do that? And just became really fascinated with consumer insights, psychographic behavior, emotional connections of brands. And so that's where I fell in love with brands and made the transition to CPG, where I worked at the Hershey Company for a number of years. Loved my experience there, working globally and domestically on all sorts of brands in the confection category. And then I've had the opportunity to enhance my indulgent addiction by working on brands like Turkey Hill, which is an ice cream and a refrigerated beverage brand. And now I am with Savencia Cheese, where our franchise big brand is Alouette.
Well, you definitely include, you find yourself at great brands that are wonderful to have in your pantry and in your refrigerator. So congratulations on that. I would be eating all the time.
Well, thank you very much. It's super important to me, actually, as a marketer, that I do personally feel connected to the brand. And so I have sought out brands and categories that I myself enjoy, because I think I am a consumer too. So yeah. I have to feel kind of this resonance with the brands I work on.
Well, I love it. Alouette has such an incredible history and heritage, quite frankly. Set the stage for, tell us a little bit about the history of the brand, if you will, and then kind of set the stage on you entering, stage left and really, what you took on as a brand marketer to increase market share.
Sure. So Alouette has actually a really long history in the U.S. We have been producing spreadable cheese under the Alouette brand name for 50 years. And so for 50 years, We have been producing an incredible product. And really, the marketing challenge that we're facing is that consumers don't really know what the brand stands for. And as a result, we have really low household penetration. So we make a great product. We have amazing brands and flavors, but consumers don't really know about us. So the challenge when I sort of came in was to really think about, okay, what does Alouette stand for? How do we take it from this kind of 50 years of history and really build a base for the next 50 years of growth?
Right.
And so we decided to do that really by looking at the brand positioning as our first step.
And it is such a crowded marketplace. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so many cheese options. It's unbelievable. It might be one of the most crowded marketplaces out there, quite frankly. So what do you do? Where do you start when you're trying to position a brand among thousands of choices?
Yeah, Laura, you're exactly right. When you walk up to that specialty cheese set, because that's where Alouette lives, it actually lives in the deli section of most major retailers. So we're not found in your traditional dairy aisle, where all of your kind of fard cheeses are and snacking cheeses. We're outside the deli in that specialty set. And when you walk up to it, it's really a sea of sameness, right? You see a lot of beige, you see a lot of French cues, whether that's the Eiffel Tower or red, white, and blue. And you're really kind of overwhelmed because the set isn't incredibly organized either, right? Most of these don't have a traditional space on shelf, and it's a little bit of a free-for-all in this set. So there's an opportunity to also make the set more approachable. Because it is so crowded, it can be overwhelming. And how do you really know the differences between the brands in the set? How do you distinguish one from another? And so we really wanted to think about from the consumer shopping lens as they approach the set, how do we be more approachable for them? How do we help them articulate and understand just a little bit of the differences in the cheese in the category?
How important is packaging at that moment in time?
Oh, when you're that far down the consumer journey and you're at the point of decision, packaging plays a key role. And in this set in particular, how do you stand out? How do you be distinct enough that consumers are actually willing to give you a second look? Because their first inclination is to shop on price. And so how do you make sure that they're looking beyond that price for something more?
Well, and the whole goal here is to create that awareness before, so that they're going and looking for you.
That's right.
That's pretty darn important for every marketer listening. I mean, that's the goal. That's what we try to achieve.
That's right.
Just got
we jumped all the way down to the bottom of the funnel right away.
We've got
There's a lot.
You got to roll it back, but we set the stage for the competition and the sea of sameness, which is crazy. So you start out by really understanding what you refer to as strategic targets, and you start with the audience to begin with.
Yes. And really to do that, we had to take a look at the entire category to get there because the category, excuse me.
A nice little friend there.
Yes. He likes to sit behind me here.
Yeah.
So from a category standpoint, as I mentioned, we had to look at the dairy and the deli, and we really had to understand cheese consumption across both of those parts of the store, because we know that the price points in the deli tend to be higher than the price points in the dairy. And so we first started by looking at just cheese consumption across both categories. And we executed a consumer segmentation study, which really helped us from a quantitative basis, really understand consumers' patterns, behaviors, thoughts, consumption rates, and how then those two parts of the cheese category kind of come together, whether you were in the dairy or in the deli.
And it's, diving into psychographics is really the key here, because a lot of brands, and this is like a real valuable lesson for our listeners right now. A lot of brands don't dive deep enough. You can't take a look at female 25-54 and make buying decisions anymore, or media decisions. You've really, really got to dive down into the psychographics and develop that niche. How did you go about really understanding the psychology behind the buyer decision?
Yeah, that's a great question. When it comes to the storytelling, it's those psychographic elements that really unlock the story for you. So once we kind of determined the segmentation and we landed quantitatively on who we thought the target should be based on kind of those demographics, we got with those consumers and spoke to them. And we spent some time with them, really understanding, why do you buy segments of cheese for certain occasions? How much are you actually spending? Why is it more important for you to spend a little bit more on special occasions? What does that do for you in terms of the things that you care about? So, for example, consumers in this category and in our target, they don't want to skimp on things like cheese. It's kind of like buying a high-end olive oil or buying a high-end beer, or spending money and really understanding the nuances in barbecue sauces, right? I think specialty cheese is kind of like that. And there's this notion that this target likes to share what they discover, and they like to share what they find with the people that they care about, whether that's their most immediate family or whether they're entertaining. They have a real desire to want to say, I have a little bit of knowledge here and I found this like secret thing. Let me share it with you.
Uh, And one thing when we're developing campaigns for a lot of our clients, we always take a look at categorically a first timer, a switcher, and a loyalist. And
Yes.
how do you take these behaviors and really understand from a segmentation standpoint how your current and/or potential clients fit within those three categories?
For us, because our household penetration is quite low, our opportunity is all about introduction. So we're really looking to drive trial with this segment of the consumption. Right now, our repeat rate is very focused on a seasonal component, where they're buying us one time a year. And so
Really?
in order to drive the growth that we're trying to achieve, we just need more people to try us more times,
Yeah.
basically, right? Because our opportunity is to introduce people to Alouette so they kind of understand what the brand is, what it stands for, and who we are.
You know, being the epitome of your audience, I go to the aisle, the deli, and I'm not just buying one cheese, I'm buying several. So how do you segment against someone, with a white, a flavored, and an orange cheese, for instance?
Mhm. Mhm. You're bringing up a very very interesting point, which is we know that this consumer not only spends quite a bit on cheese on a daily basis, roughly $17 a trip on cheese. When they're purchasing for a special occasion, they're going to buy about $28 worth of cheese. And they'll have anywhere from 5 to 7 different types of cheese in their refrigerator at one time. And that's really coming down to usage occasion, actually, right? Where that same consumer might buy their traditional shredded cheese that may be private label for their taco night or for their, Italian night. But if they're going to make a cheese plate and want to kind of have a little bit more of a special moment, that's when they're going to go over to the deli and buy something that is a little bit pricier, because they intrinsically want to share that moment with someone or have that moment themselves. So
Right.
it really ties to consumer behavior.
Yeah, it really does. So the next point here is finding that thing that really creates that uniqueness in the mindset of the consumer so that they're making the buying decisions that you need them and want them to. So this is where that thing with the brand, I think, is one of the hardest parts of branding. This is where all these strategic insights and consumer insights really come into play so that you can differentiate and create, not just differentiate, but truly create distinction back to that sea of sameness.
Yeah, absolutely. And so once we knew the consumer, then we started to take a step back and look at ourselves. And we said, what does Alouette have? What does it own? what can it talk about? And when we did our research and talked to consumers, they could not repeat back to us a consistent message on who we were. And so it was a real challenge to say, okay, well, what do we have? And how does that then transcend into what do we want to be? And, this is where your internal constituents, when you're brand building, can be a real asset to you. So not only did we talk to consumers, but we talked to employees who had worked at the company for 40 plus years and really started to understand, what was the company like? What was it like to produce Alouette here? What were some of the challenges? What stories have you heard? And through that, we found a couple of interesting nuggets. One of the nuggets we found is that Jean-Noël Bongrand, who brought the product to the US from our French heritage, had this really entrepreneurial spirit and just really wanted to share the love of French cheeses with Americans. But the second thing we found is that he really wanted to build it kind of with the Americans in mind. And how do we take what we have from this French cheese and adapt it in a way that Americans would love? And so one of the ways they did that was with the name, Alouette. Alouette is a preschool song. It's a tune.
But they Alouette,
You got it. That's exactly it. And so they thought, okay, the original name of the product was tartare, and they can't use that name, right? Because it's really close to kind of like tartar on your teeth and not very appetizing. So they thought, what is something that we could tap into? And they knew that consumers knew this word Alouette, and they knew that there was this tune. And so really crafting the messaging in a way that was adaptable to the US. And then the last thing that we discovered is Alouette is actually a bird. It's a songbird. It's a lovely little lark. And we just thought, what a great connection to build a distinctive asset around the brand through our Alouette bird, the lark.
And then you're in this strategy session with your team, you're spitballing ideas, and what happens?
Yeah, we brought together a team of internal and external partners, and you are riffing and you're kind of talking about what is the potential. And Alouette has this notion behind it that has this like surprising and delighting experience when you consume our spreadable cheeses, for example. It comes in a ramekin. You can serve it right out of the ramekin. It has this floret on top of it, and the garnish is on top. So you can feel really good about serving it. It's resealable. Have all these things, these kind of like little twists. And so it was really important to us that when we were building the campaign and we were building the creative idea, that it in and of itself had something that was a little bit of a twist, a little bit of an unexpected thing in the category, something that individuals could kind of resonate with. And so for us, as we're riffing, someone says, there's that notion of like a little birdie told me something, right? You know how when you're having a conversation about something or someone, you're like, a little birdie told me, and you kind of share the thing. Well, that's what we're doing with Alouette. Our little lark is our storyteller, and she is going to share with you this wonderful brand of cheese called Alouette. And she is going to help us articulate how great this product is to our target.
I love brand characters. This agency has developed a lot over its 45-year history, and it takes a very, very special brand, and I think a very bold leader to believe that a brand character can deliver a message that will resonate. What was the decision-making criteria that you went through to really say, this is going to be it. This is going to be a good idea. I'm confident in this.
For us, it really tied back to how are we going to articulate this story? And is it coming from a place of authenticity?
Exactly. I was almost going to use that word.
Well, thank you for not using it because you're allowed to answer with it. Yeah. It's coming from a very authentic place that we're not trying to create something here that doesn't exist.
Right.
We're taking something that already exists. We're modernizing it. We're putting a little bit of a twist to it in terms of using an icon in the category, right? This type of icon is not expected in the category, but it will allow Alouette to stand out in the set. And this notion of a songbird is kind of lighthearted and approachable in a manner with which the set today can be a little stodgy, a little harsh. And this is just a little bit of brightness, if you will.
It really is. And, I think in the consumer mindset, they're hit with, well, we all are. It doesn't matter if it's B2B or consumer, so many messages each day. I mean, between 6 and 10,000 or more. And we need to interact with a brand 26 times before making a buying decision. And a bold move with a brand character really has the opportunity to increase memorability and connection faster, reducing the number of times that you've got to interact to make a buying decision.
And I believe the other part that this character has going for it is the fact that it is a songbird.
Yeah.
So it does
and ethereal and wonderful and happy, and it just makes you feel good.
Yes. And we can tap into that tune that you hummed so beautifully a moment ago that punctuates the songbird and allows kind of that sonic branding. It's that earworm, that kind of gets stuck there. And if we do that enough and leverage it enough and repeat it enough, even if you go to the set, you can just say the one with the bird. Which one is the one with the bird?
I mean, you've won at that point. You've just won. I love it. So all this strategy is incredible. And then you needed to execute and really bring the right team to the table to make sure it was on brand.
Yes. To do that, you have to look internally and you have to look externally. And in the past, over the 50-year history of the company, I don't think there was a lot of desire to kind of want to unlock strategic marketing. And so when I joined the team, it was very important to me that I had an internal team who had a basis in strategic marketing, who could really, from a CPG lens, look at the category, help do all the analysis and analytics to kind of land us there. So you have to make sure internally that you have like-minded people. And then you have to make sure externally, with your agency partners, that you have individuals who are willing to go on the journey with you, who don't necessarily have all the answers, but collectively together, you can build those answers in a way that everyone kind of feels buy-in and accountability around what you're creating.
And then you're developing the campaign and I'm sure you're going through lots of revisions and, to get there. Talk us through the journey of where the creative started and where you have now launched it.
It's a great question because it's extremely iterative. And as always with marketers, you're going to get 1,000 opinions, right? And you're going to get a lot of input. For us, it was very important to land the design on the character. And how did the character really come to life? Did it align with the brand positioning? Was she approachable, lighthearted? Was she kind of whimsical in a way that you just feel different when you experience the bird? It was also an exercise on color. And color was really important to us in terms of the degree with which you're thinking about the colors, whether you're going bolder, whether you're going softer, whether you're going more pastel. How does that then tie to help educate in terms of the portfolio? And then what are the distinctive assets within the campaign that you can leverage? Is outside the bird, we've created a beautiful little flight path that as she moves across the screen, you're watching the flight path. And I think the flight path can guide consumers on a journey. And we just use those repeatedly, consistently. And it's a challenge for marketers because I think, especially externally, there's a desire to want to tweak and change. And if I just take this and make this optimization, no, we're so early in our campaign that we have got to be consistent, repeated in a way that resonates. And we're not trying to change things so much. Because I think we as marketers tend to get sick of things before consumers do. And so we have to stay the course with these distinctive assets that we've created and just leverage them over and over again.
Couple follow-up questions for our listeners who are driving and cannot look up the actual look and feel of the bird. Please explain that. where you
Yeah,
land there.
there's a couple of key things about the bird. The bird is really illustrated in a way that is done with a simple line. It's a simple one-line design. The bird is in flight. So the wing is actually up, not down. The bird is looking forward. And if you look at her beak, you'll notice two little music notes kind of coming out of her beak. And so it was really important to us that the bird was in movement. It was important that she was singing. It was important that she was facing forward. And it was important that she wasn't really complex in a way that we could use the bird in multiple places without the design complicating the execution.
Yeah, I love that. I've got a great visual now too, although I've already peaked. But the other thing that I think is really important about what you just mentioned is consistency. And there's, so many marketers within the digital realm. We've got this mindset of test and scale, and they don't give the creative enough time to penetrate and to really work and to impact. What's the rule of thumb that you use there from a timing standpoint?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. And in full transparency, it's a conversation that I'm even navigating internally. I'm facing that a little bit now. And our marketing budget is not huge. And so from a timing perspective, we've had to be really clear on how we're leveraging that return. So for us, it was really about retailers in a specific city and looking at the performance and the velocity of those products at those retailers because we had to be so targeted. From a creative and an equity perspective, that's something that takes much longer, right? You're going to want to try and live with something for, 18 months to 20 months to see, are you actually making headway on the brand and the brand positioning? So it's almost like you have to separate the business performance from the equity building to really understand what's working and what's not working.
I love that you're going into this with that mindset, because a lot of times, especially when you've got really a rebrand here, there is going to be some immediate effects, but it's not necessarily sustaining long term because you're still building. I mean, your audience is just, it's laddering up. So setting expectations with, CFOs and all of that, I think is, the sales team is very, very important.
And these are conversations that you need to have not 1 month before you're going into campaign launch.
Exactly.
Right? These are conversations that you need to start at the very beginning. And yes, our cross-functional counterparts might not fully understand all of the strategic intent behind what you're doing. But when you land the target, share it with your CFO. Sit down with them and say, let me just share with you what we've learned about our consumer. And as you get into the creative idea, just even a gut check to say, does this resonate with you? Whether they're the target or not, they have stake and buy-in around what you're building. And so I often find setting precedent early and often with those internal constituents only makes your life easier on the back end. Because when you get to the position of measurement, you can reflect back and say, remember when we had this discussion? Remember when we talked about the media plan and sharing the media plan with those individuals? And they might not understand all the detail. They don't have to, but you can help them sort of learn in a way that allows them to feel comfortable asking those questions of you. And you should be the expert.
I think one thing that's tough when it comes to execution, and you mentioned media, is understanding, backdooring in the impressions and the reach or the share of voice that is needed in order to impact. How did you go about planning that? And what media types did you use?
Yeah, to do that very early math, we started with the household penetration. And because our household penetration is relatively low, we simply use the opportunity to say, okay, if we garnered the X amount of households, it would result in this business growth. And so to do that, then we formulated the media plan. And the media plan really came down to a couple of factors around strength of distribution. It came down to category strength. and then cross-referencing that with the markets of where we were strong and where we were weak, and really making sure we had enough dollars in each of those markets to drive a sufficient level of penetration in order to see a change in those markets.
Right.
So it was done from a high level and then very down very deep into the specific executions.
And how is the campaign working?
Yeah, I'm happy to say in the market that we
Thank
executed
God.
this campaign, yep, we have velocity growth, which is what we wanted. And I will say, even our retail partners, in terms of the creative and the packaging and the execution, we have gotten nothing but positive responses. And retailers are lovely, and we've gotten some responses of, well, you had to do something, and oh, it's about time, and you guys needed to modernize. And so it's just further validation around all the work that you're doing.
Right. One thing that I think encapsulates everything that you've done and executed here is this idea of storytelling. You talked a little bit about the ethereal nature, the just lovely feeling that the brand helps someone feel when they interact with it from a media standpoint, and then how ultimately you want them to rejoice when you see them in the cheese deli.
Mm-hmm.
How important in your mind is storytelling to the execution and outcome of this campaign?
I believe if we did not take the time to really leverage kind of the internal and retrospective view back, we would not have landed in this position. I think as marketers, we want to rush to get something to market. Time is of the essence, and we have this ability to create, and you said it, learn, optimize, and execute. But we didn't think we had anything going for us early on. Talking to consumers, we didn't really think there was much there. And when we paused and took the time, and I'm not saying this has to be months and months, but if you just sit with the fact that there could be something here, and if we really reflect back on why this brand was introduced, what makes it unique, oftentimes you find this, silver lining and this thread that you can then carry through all of the execution. And for us, it was our Lark, and it was this secret about these French cheeses that we just want to share with consumers.
Yeah, I think it's great. And, I think there are a lot of brands that don't realize they're taking the easy way out, but they do without taking the bold approach that you did. And the easy way out is, showing the maker of the cheese, the heritage, and you went totally against what would have been something seemingly a natural route to travel down.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes guts as a marketer. And that's why the velocity that you're achieving is what it is today. What advice do you have for marketers to fight against the norm and really break out of it to come up with things that really can create the distinction?
Yeah, for me, it's actually quite simple. It's, when you hear an idea or you see a visual, take your logo out, take your brand out, and put a competitive item on top of it. Put an adjacent brand on top of it. Is that representative of you, or could the competitor also do it?
Yeah.
And if the answer is, well, the competition could do it too, or an adjacent brand could do it too, you haven't quite hit it yet. And I think in a category like cheese, there's lots of routes that we could have gone down around French heritage, which is lovely. It's lovely. We could have leveraged a lot of our origin in that way. We could have also leveraged the fact that we're from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and our milk sourcing and all of those things. And we could have also leveraged the fact that we have great product and it tastes delicious. All of those avenues can be repeated by someone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Maybe it's not Lancaster County, maybe it's a different location, but for me, it really comes down to what's the part of the story that you own, that only you own.
Yeah.
And it's hard work. It's hard to get there and it's uncomfortable to get there because you have other people who are saying, well, let's talk about the milk and let's talk about, let's talk about our Frenchness and all of these things. But at the end of the day, our Alouette bird distinguishes us from the set, and nobody else has that.
It absolutely does. There's so many incredible nuggets that you've shared with us today. And what advice do you have for brands that are really trying to build that authenticity and really stories to help people believe along the way?
It's interesting. I probably have maybe a pretty simple way of doing that, but it works for me. And that is, as I'm talking about and learning about the brand, and I'll be transparent in the fact that I've worked on brands that have great history. Not all brands have this history, but it's allowed me to kind of whiteboard and lay out, well, what are the things that are unique? And then I sort of sit with it and repeat the story. And maybe someone adds to the story or subtracts from the story. And you kind of live with it for a while. And the idea that we had around our little birdie came from an interagency meeting. And someone in the room said, well, what if the little birdie told you? And that was the spark. And that was all we needed. So be open to the idea coming from anywhere. Be open to the idea that you don't have to have the answer, that you can have a team and a resource of people. And be open to the idea that it can evolve, that you don't have to land it at the first moment.
I love it. Looking back on this, what lessons have you learned from building brand resonance for Alouette that you think could be universally applied to any brand out there?
For me, it does come down to the story.
Yeah.
Every brand has a story that they want to tell, whether that story is, focused on an external opportunity, whether it's more of a mission, whether it's more of an internal story. Every brand has its story. And so really distilling down to what is that? And who do you want the world to know that you are, basically? I'm not saying it's easy. I feel like I'm talking about it in a way that it's easy. It's not. It's hard work.
Well, I tell you, you've been so inspiring today. There's so many incredible nuggets and takeaways. One of the themes that we've got on the show this year is this concept of better at. And we as marketers are constantly evolving, right? We're constantly evolving with tech changes, with brand changes, market changes, product, whatever it might be. And I love this concept of better at, because the better we become at what we do, and it can be with soft skills or hard skills, the better we build teams, the better the marketing works, the better we build foundations for the future of a brand. There's just so many things.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking through this concept of better at, what do you want to get better at in the coming year?
I love this question. And I could go down a lot of different pathways, but when I think about the discussion we had today, when I think about maybe individuals listening, our attention spans right now are so short. I think we're down to 2 seconds or less. For me, I want to be better at listening and taking the time to listen to consumers, listen to my internal partners, listening to my team, listening to my agency partners, because there's a lot of value to be had in taking time to be able to listen, because we don't have to, as a marketer, we want to problem solve and get to the solution. But to do that, you have to listen.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for your incredible insights today. I know our listeners have been listening all the way through and have learned a ton. If they want to reach out to you, or if they want to learn more about the campaign, what is the best route for them to do that?
Yeah, the best route for them to do that is to go to alouettecheese.com. and it will take you to our lovely site with our bird. And we also have a channel on YouTube where you can find it.
Well, that's wonderful. Kriston, thank you so much for your
Thank you, Lori.
today. And if you'd
Thank
like
you.
to get a hold of me, you can email me at lori@strategycast.com, and you'll see me all over LinkedIn as well. Kriston, what a gift. Again, thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Thank you, Lori. Have a good day.
You too.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.